G'day everyone, welcome to K.I.S kayak fishing. Today we'll be running a field test on the T24 Watersnake electric motor from Jarvis Walker, but the main thing we'll be testing is the kayak mount that you can now purchase with the T24 Watersnake. This kayak mount is handy for people that aren't very handy. I'm not very handy, I'm not good at making mounts or making modifications, so this is really handy. And the good thing is you can take the motor off, store it out of the way, and this is the only footprint you have on your kayak afterwards if you don't want to take the motor out. I know other kayak mounts, you can take them completely off, but you make them yourself. One thing I want to point out is if you do buy the set with the kayak mount and the motor, you don't get the clamp. So that's something you have to think about, where if you're not happy with this, you're going to have to go out and buy the clamp. I haven't seen any videos online for this motor with this kayak mount, except for the Jarvis Walker video. The kayak he used is not a pro angler, so I wanted to provide an option for people to see a different way to mount this on the pro angler using the kayak mount. Also, a lot of people mount this type of motor in the Mirage cassette. Again, I'm not very handy, so I didn't want to do that. Plus I wanted to have my Mirage drive in the Mirage section so I can use it whenever I want, because this motor is only going to be used to get from point A to point B. Then I'll be using the Mirage drive to pedal around, and then I'll use the motor to get back to the ramp or back to another fishing spot where there's long distances between fishing spots. The cassette drive, it does track a lot better when this is mounted in the cassette drive, obviously, because it's in the middle of the kayak of the pro angler. But the thing is, you're going to have cables near your feet, and there's obviously a way you can fix that, but I'm not handy at that. So this is to show people how this kayak mount works from Jarvis Walker with the pro angler, so you can have this as an option if you're not very handy. With this kayak, I've got a 50 amp AGM battery. This should be good for minimum 2 hours without damaging the battery, but I reckon I'll get a lot more use out, a lot more time, just judging by what people have said online and doing a bit of research. They get a lot more time than the specifics say, because this motor draws 19 amps an hour at full speed, but I'm assuming Jarvis Walker overestimates, so there's no complaints about under too much power usage. Now the good thing about this kayak mount is you can rotate the motor out of the way. You could drag it out as far as you want from your kayak. There's really a lot of options for moving it around, and which is the advantage of it. And as I said, you could just take it out. It's very, very easy, and then that's all the space it takes up on your pro angler if you don't want to use the motor, so it doesn't get in the way too much. I've mounted this in front of the rod holder, the rear, the molded rod holder. The molded rod holder, you can still use it. It's probably easier if you get an extension. Some people can make PVC pipe extensions. Just an extension that brings it up here so you can use it as a rod holder. That's where I keep my net, my landing net. So hopefully it won't impact me too much. If it does impact, I've got the other side for the rod holder. Okay, let's get a closer look at how this works. I think it's important to add that this motor has 2 speeds, low speed and high speed. That's pretty much the only way they describe it, and forward and reverse, and obviously in the centers off. That's very important later on, as you'll see in the video. I'll describe why. This little latch here pulls out a smaller tiller if that's what you want to use, but I just use the larger one because it moves it right up to the next to you on the kayak. Okay, so as you can see, it's connected by 4 nut and bolt combinations. The nut and bolts, they are okay to access from this rear hatch of the pro angler. I suggest you have the nut and bolts in this configuration, because if you turn it around at all, it may create issues in tightening the bolts, the nuts, sorry, because of the rear rod holder. It does get in the way, but you can do it. As you see, I've got shorter arms and a bit stockier hand and arm, so if I can do it, most people who go kayaking can. These are to tighten the angle of the bar. Now it's very important, as you see in the video later on in the field test, you have to tighten these as hard as you can. You can't leave them loose at all, despite what the Jarvis Walker video shows, where he says how easy it is and he hardly does anything to these to tighten up his motor. You really need to make sure. Same with these. If you loosen these up, it rotates the angle of the bar. You need to make sure these are as tight as you can get them, because as you'll see later on, it causes a lot of issues if you haven't got them tightened up. If you do have them tightened up, it works fine, it works great, but just make sure you do have them tightened up. You can see here that there's a little bit of overhang on the rod holder. It doesn't affect, it's only about 1/2 centimetre, 5 mil. It doesn't affect the use of the rod holder, and it's still quite strong. It's probably the strongest section I could think to mount it. We'll just go around the front here, and as you can see, again, just here, there's probably about 1 centimetre of overhang. Again, it doesn't affect anything. The nuts and bolts here are easy to get to. This is a failed attempt at trying to do a quick, cheap, without screwing in the kayak too much. But as always, if I'd done it the right way, I'd have 2 less screws, 2 less drill spots in my kayak right now. As you can see, it doesn't take up too much space on the kayak, so you'll have plenty of space for your live well. The battery can be moved over, so you can fit another little esky bag. It's up to you. All right, we'll go check out some of the field test videos. This is my first time using it without the nuts tightened excessively, and as you can see, I pretty much went straight to top speed, and you can see the way it jolted out of the water. Now this one, I've tightened the nuts up a lot more, but I've also started at low speed to build up a bit more speed, give it a bit more time to get some momentum. Once I got a bit of momentum, as you'll see shortly, I increased the speed to top speed. And there it is, and you can see that it handled it perfectly fine. At top speed I was getting 5 to 6 kilometers per hour. At low speed I was getting about 3 kilometers per hour. And as you can see from the water is glass. There's no wind. There's basically very little tidal movement. I was slightly going against the tide, but this is the Nepean River, fresh water, so it was a good test environment to see how this goes at the best conditions. On the next one of the later videos, you'll see that I use the Mirage drive while the motor's going full pelt, and then I get about 7.4 kilometers per hour. In regards to tracking, yeah, tracking is not the best. I tried steering with the motor, which you can do. It does work a little bit, but the best way I found to handle it was I just use the rudder. So you hold the motor straight and use the rudder, and generally the steering is fine. It'll be just like using the Mirage pedals. If you try and steer from the motor, it's not very responsive, and that's part of the issues of using a side mounted kayak on the Pro Angler, but it still worked fine. So I've tightened up the nuts, should hopefully fix it, but as you can see, when you go to top speed straight away, again the motor just wants to throw itself out of the water. So now I'm starting at low speed to build up the momentum, so I let the momentum build. I probably could press top speed now, but I'm just testing the steering, and as you can see, there's not really much movement on the steering, even though I'm trying to turn. The best way to definitely use this when it comes to the Pro Angler and it being mounted on the side is just to hold it straight and use your rudder. That's when you get the best movement. So you can see here I've built up the speed, and I can put it into top speed now, and the kayak mount handles the motor perfectly fine. You get some decent speed going. What I want to say as well is that the battery for this kayak weighed 15 kilos, and my young fella on the back weighs 35 kilos. So there is a bit of weight in the back there. So when I say I got 6 kilometers per hour top speed at its best, there is a fair bit of weight in the back. You might get a bit better once you don't have that extra 35 kilos in the back. Again, you can see the tracking, pretty much there's not much movement when you're trying to steer it. Again, the rudder is the best way to steer it. Also, I just want to remind everyone that, as you can see where my hand is, to turn it off, you either got to reach over with the other hand, or you got to move your hand along the tiller back to the motor head to access the off switch. It can be a bit finicky, but you know, with a bit of practice, I'm sure everyone will be fine and get used to it. But just give yourself a few extra meters to find that off switch, and don't forget your kayak's going to have the momentum going forward. So, and obviously with no reverse function on the Mirage drive, you might just have to give it a quick reverse on the motor just to pull yourself up a bit quicker. So this field test finished for the Jarvis Walker T24S Watersnake on the Jarvis Walker kayak mount. I hope this field test has helped you out in some way. It is a good kayak mount for if you just want something simple and easy, and also something that doesn't take up too much space on your Pro Angler 12. The tracking, it can be better, but if you just keep it forward and you use your rudder to steer, I didn't find too many issues. And as you saw in the field test video, it's probably best to get yourself moving with the lower speed before you use the higher speed, because the initial jolt of the high speed, it tends to struggle the kayak mount. So yeah, that's the suggestion I can have. Also, give yourself some room to turn the motor off. Don't leave it to the last minute, because reaching along the tiller and finding the off switch and making sure you do that right, it can be tricky. Maybe with practice, because I've only used it once, it can be a bit quicker, but you know, until then, maybe give yourself some space. So if you like this video and you want more videos of items I use on the kayak or different fishing lures that I may use, subscribe to the channel, and I'll keep them coming.